Hey everyone, have you ever heard your school go silent for the wrong reason? Ever sat in class only to hear a voice on the loudspeaker say, "This is not a drill"? Or worse, looked out the window and saw someone staring back? Tonight, I've got two terrifying school stories for you. One about a man who pounded on a classroom door and then vanished. And another about someone who watched students for years without ever stepping inside. Are you sure your school is safe? Let's begin. It was supposed to be a throwaway Friday. 7th period, almost spring break. The kind of day where no one really pays attention, not even the teachers. We were in calculus class, but nobody was calculating anything. Our teacher, Mr. Bryce Landon, was the kind of guy who knew when to ease up. Instead of reviewing integrals, he pulled up a quiz game on Sporkle and projected it onto the whiteboard. We were guessing brand logos, laughing, competing for bragging rights over who could name Adidas or Pepsi the fastest. It felt like any other lazy end-of-week moment in high school, the kind you never think twice about. And then everything changed. The intercom cracked to life with a static buzz that sliced through the laughter. Everyone turned their heads. What came next made the room drop into a cold, bone-deep silence. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Teachers, initiate lockdown procedures. Immediately. The voice of Principal Corman sounded shaken, unstable, like he'd just seen something he couldn't explain. Mr. Landon froze for half a second, just half a second, but that was all it took to feel the shift in the air. He jumped into action, turning off the lights, locking the door, and waving us to the back corner of the classroom like we were soldiers taking cover. No one made a sound. The glow of the projector faded as the screen went dark. Then, the hum of electricity stopped. Even the emergency panel near the back of the room went dead. The school had cut all power. For the first time in my life, I felt real fear. Not nervous before a test fear. Not forgot to do my homework fear. Something primal, animal. Every second stretched out. No phones, no whispers. Just breathing and the cold realization that something, or someone, had gotten inside our school. And they weren't supposed to be there. We sat there, 22 of us shuttled in the back corner of room 214, surrounded by backpacks and the glow of dying phone screens. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock, though even that felt too loud in the silence. Some kids were whispering prayers. Others clenched their fists so tight their knuckles turned white. I could feel the breath of the person next to me trembling short, shaky, like they were trying not to cry. No one knew what was happening, but we all knew something wasn't right. And then, we heard it. A sound from far down the hallway. Not just any sound, a voice. It started faint, like a scream lost in the wind. Then it got louder, and louder, until it was clear. A man was screaming wild, raw, unhinged at the top of his lungs. "I'll find you. I'll knock every one of you down." Every word echoed off the walls like thunder. The sound didn't just travel, it crawled under your skin. You didn't just hear it, you felt it. Someone in the room gasped. A girl named Chelsea began crying silently. Then another. It was like the fear was contagious, spreading like smoke in a sealed room. I wanted to tell them it would be okay, but my mouth wouldn't open. My jaw was clenched too tight. The screaming man's voice grew closer, and then came the banging. It started against lockers. Loud, metal on metal, like someone was slamming a crowbar into them, one by one, as he moved down the hallway. Bang, bang, bang. Every hit made us flinch. Then, he reached our door. Silence. Just for a second. Then, bang, bang, bang. He was pounding on our classroom door. "Open up." One of the crying girls shrieked. Another started hyperventilating. Mr. Landon, still crouched near us, gave us a firm gesture. "Stay quiet." But he was sweating. His eyes were fixed on the door like he expected it to shatter any moment. "I know you're in there." The door rattled as if he were trying to rip it off its hinges. I gripped my friend Jake's arm so hard I probably left nail marks. No one breathed. No one moved. It felt like we were stuck in a nightmare, one of those dreams where you're hiding, and you know the thing chasing you is just inches away, But this wasn't a dream. This was real. Then, as suddenly as he came, he left. His screams faded into the distance, down the hallway, still howling and muttering incomprehensible things. The last thing we heard was something like, "You'll all see, you'll all see." And then silence. Not the comforting kind. The kind that comes after a storm, when you're not sure if the sky is done or just waiting. I don't remember how long we stayed frozen. Time didn't move right after that. Every second dragged like it was trying to keep us there forever. Eventually, the intercom clicked again. Principal Corman, voice brittle and tired, told us the man had assaulted someone at the front office and disappeared inside the building. Staff didn't know if he was armed. All they knew was that they couldn't find him. They told us to keep the doors locked, to stay in class, and pretend like everything was normal. But nothing about this was normal. The rest of that day went by and a haze classes resumed, but nobody paid attention. Not really. We sat in silence, pretending to care about lectures while every creak in the hallway made us flinch. No one knew where the man had gone. The school had no cameras, no security guards, just locked doors and a whole of guessing. They told us it was safe now, but no one believed it. And then, Monday came. Rumors spread fast, too fast to ignore. A janitor, working the late-night shift, had gone into one of the storage closets near the back of the gym. It was one of those old maintenance rooms no one really used anymore. Dusty, quiet, tucked into the forgotten end of the school. When he opened the door, he found someone inside. Asleep. On the floor. A man in ragged clothes, curled up like he belonged there. And here's the part that made my stomach turn. Sticking out of his jacket pocket was a handgun. A .44 Magnum. We weren't supposed to know that. But word got out anyway. It always does. They said the janitor may have accidentally left the door open when he ran to call the police. By the time they arrived, the man was gone. Gone. Just like that. Vanished into the night. The police searched the area, but found nothing. No footprints. No fingerprints. Not even a single hair left behind. It was like the building itself had swallowed him up. They never found out who he was. He wasn't a parent. He wasn't a staff member. He wasn't even a registered visitor. Some said he might have been living in the woods behind the school. Others claimed he used to be a student, and something had finally snapped. But none of it was confirmed. It was just whispers. And fear. And here's the worst part. The part that keeps me up at night. To this day, no one knows if he was ever caught. Some of us like to imagine he got the help he needed. That he's in a hospital somewhere, being treated, far away from any school. But the truth? We don't know. We never did. And sometimes, late at night, I find myself walking past the school after practice, and I look at the windows. I swear, just once, I saw movement like someone pulling down a curtain from inside one of the old classrooms. They say it's just my imagination, but I remember that scream, that voice. And deep down, I know one thing for sure. He was never supposed to leave that closet. The weeks that followed were strange. Classes returned to normal on the surface. Homework, quizzes, announcements over the PA. But something had shifted inside everyone. The hallways felt heavier, quieter. Students walked in pairs, never alone. Teachers started locking classroom doors during lessons. Even Mr. Landon wasn't the same. He kept glancing toward the hallway during class, like he expected someone to come back. Someone who never should have been there. The janitor who found the man eventually quit. Said he couldn't walk past that closet without hearing breathing. People laughed, nervously, but no one blamed him. As for me, I haven't slept through a single night since. I keep thinking about the moment he was right outside our door. The pounding, the screaming, that feeling in my gut, the absolute certainty that I wasn't going to make it out of that room, that none of us would. And worst of all, the fact we never got answers. Who was he? Why was he there? How did he get past everyone, and where did he go? The school installed cameras a few months later, hired a full-time security guard. But none of that helps at 2 a.m. when I lie in bed staring at the ceiling and wonder if he's out there watching, waiting. You see, some things don't end just because the bell rings. Some stories stay with you. But here's the thing about fear. It doesn't always knock on the front door. Sometimes it creeps in sideways, slides into the cracks of what seems like a normal day, during something as routine as lunch. That's where the next story comes in. Another lockdown. But this time, not because someone broke in, but because someone was already watching. It happened at Twin Mesa Middle School, just a few towns over. A rainy October day, sky hanging low like it knew something we didn't. Kids were lining up for food in the cafeteria, laughing, trading snacks. The usual harmless chaos of school lunch. And then, out of nowhere, boom, 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 boom. 4 loud bangs. Most thought it was thunder. But thunder doesn't make the campus security run and screaming. Thunder doesn't lock hundreds of kids in a multi-purpose room with glass walls that need to be covered fast. And thunder doesn't wear a face people recognize from last Halloween, standing in his window, carving something into his arm and writing a message in blood on the glass. They thought it was a sick Halloween prank. They were wrong. Because this time, the danger wasn't trying to get in. It was right outside, staring back. And he knew every inch of that schoolvery door, every window, every blind spot. I'll tell you exactly what happened that day. But you should know now, this story, it's not about screaming in hallways. It's about the silence that follows. It was one of those rainy October days where the clouds feel too low, like the sky is watching you. I remember it clearly because lunch had just started at Twin Mesa Middle School. I was in the first lunch group along with all the 6th graders and about half the 7th graders. The cafeteria was buzzing like it always was, kids laughing, trading chips for cookies, a couple trying to sneak into the vending machines when no one was looking. Nothing about that day seemed off, at first. I was standing in line with my tray, waiting to grab a slice of pepperoni pizza when it happened. 4 loud booms. They came from somewhere outside. Deep, hollow, and spaced just far enough apart to make your heart skip in between. Some of us thought it was thunder. It had been raining all morning. After all, the sky was heavy, the air smelled like wet pavement, and it made sense for a second. But then people started screaming, and thunder doesn't do that. Security burst into the cafeteria, shouting, not panicking, but urgent, telling everyone to drop their food and move to the multi-purpose room. No one argued. Even the kids who normally laughed at rules followed orders without hesitation. That's how you know something's wrong. I left my tray behind and moved with the crowd, heart racing faster than I wanted to admit. You know that feeling when you're not sure what's happening, but your body already knows it's bad? Yeah, that. And that looks sleek and modern until you realize it lets everyone outside see everything inside. That's the first thing they covered. Curtains were yanked shut like someone was trying to hide us from something already watching. And then came the adults at the doors. Every exit guarded, every face pale. No one was saying what was going on. And honestly, that silence, it was way louder than any thunder I've ever heard. From the story, the man outside Twin Mesa, inside the multi-purpose room, time stopped. Hundreds of us were packed together, like pieces on a chessboard, quiet, still, waiting for something to move. The adults stood guard by the exits, whispering into walkie-talkies and checking their phones every 10 seconds. Nobody knew anything for sure. But then Tyler, one of my friends, bold, curious, and way too calm for the situation, stepped away from our group and started talking to one of the aides near the curtain. When he came back, his face had lost all color. "What'd they say?" I whispered. Tyler hesitated. "You know that row of houses just past the school fence? Like, right across from the field?" "Yeah," I said, confused. "There's a guy. He lives in one of those houses. Apparently he's not well. Mental health stuff. And he's been watching kids for a while now." I blinked. "What do you mean watching?" "He walks around outside the school. Never says anything. Just watches. And now he's barricaded himself in his house. Says if the county tries to evict him, he'll hurt himself. Or worse." My stomach twisted. I wanted to say Tyler was exaggerating, just being dramatic, but his voice was dead serious. There was no punchline. And then he added something that sent a cold ripple through every bone in my body. He's on some kind of registry. One of those government lists. He's not supposed to be near schools. That's when I realized why the adults had covered the windows. It wasn't to stop someone from looking in. It was to stop us from looking out. Suddenly, I remembered something Kayla had told us last Halloween. Kayla lives just a few houses down from where the man stays. She swore that on Halloween night, she saw him in his window, doing something she thought was a twisted prank. According to her, he was standing there, staring out at the street, his arm covered in something red, and he was using it to write a message on the glass. The message said, "Don't come here, or I'll make you disappear." She told us she thought it was fake blood, just part of the decorations. Everyone laughed it off. But now it felt like something much darker. I looked around the room. Everyone else was whispering. Tension was building like a storm trapped in a bottle. I could feel eyes scanning the windows, even behind the curtains. Like we all knew he was still out there, standing just beyond the school grounds. Maybe watching, maybe waiting. The weirdest part? We weren't even sure if he had a weapon. But somehow, that made it worse. Because that meant we didn't know what he wanted. And when you don't know what someone wants, you don't know what they're willing to do. I think the scariest part wasn't what we heard. It was what we didn't. We were all packed in that massive room with the curtains drawn, the exit sealed, and no one giving us answers. The longer we sat in silence, the more our minds filled in the blanks. Some kids were whispering theories. Others were trying to lighten the mood with nervous jokes. But no one was laughing. Really. Then Kayla, still pale from earlier, leaned in and said, "You know what the weirdest part is?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her. "That night on Halloween," she whispered, "I thought the guy was just trying to freak people out. But he wasn't looking at the trick-or-treaters. He wasn't even looking at the street." She paused. "He was looking at me." Her voice broke on that last word. It was soft, but sharp like a paper cut. It hurt more because it felt so small and so real. I was standing at my bedroom window, and he was at his, just staring, like he knew I was watching. Then he raised his hand and pressed something onto the glass. I thought it was a Halloween prop, like fake gore or something. But now, she looked down, biting her lip. Now I don't think it was fake at all. The room suddenly felt colder. Before anyone could respond, the overhead lights flickered. Just for a second, a tiny dim. Probably nothing. But in that moment, every single head turned toward the wall of curtains. And that's when it happened. A loud thump against the glass. We all froze. No one screamed. No one moved. It was like every instinct in the room activated at onset and draw attention to yourself. Don't move. Don't even breathe. A second thump followed. Then a slow dragging sound, like someone was sliding their hand across the window. Some of the older students stepped forward, ready to peek through the curtain, but the adults stopped them immediately. "Away from the wall," one of the aides ordered. "Step back, no." We backed off, but I could see something from the angle where I stood, just a tiny corner of light where the curtain didn't close all the way. And in that space, I saw a shadow. It was long, still, humanoid, not moving, just standing there. I'll never forget that shape, that silence. It wasn't like someone trying to break in. It was more like someone letting us know that he was already there, that he could wait. And he was willing to. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Eventually, the adults began moving us out, class by class, room by room. But no one ever told us if someone was caught, or if anyone had actually seen a face at the window. Later, when we returned to our homerooms, I passed by the multipurpose room again. The curtains had been reopened. And there, near the foggy lower corner of one window, something had been drawn into the condensation. 4 letters, ragged and shaky. K-A-Y-L. The last letter had been smeared, like someone was interrupted, like they weren't finished. For the rest of the day, Nothing felt real. The hallways looked the same. The lockers hadn't moved. Teachers stood in doorways pretending to be calm. But the tension hadn't left. It clung to everything. It lived in the way we walked quieter, looked over our shoulders. Didn't someone else spoke first? They never confirmed if anyone had been on the other side of that glass. They didn't need to. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept circling back to the condensation on the window, the half-written name, the shape in the glass. I tried telling myself it was a coincidence, that maybe Kayla had imagined it, that we all had. But the next morning, she didn't come to school, and that's when the rumors started to swirl. Someone claimed they'd seen him again, the man, near the back gate of the school, just standing there, not moving, watching the building from the trees. Another said they heard he'd been taken in by police but released the same night. Nobody had proof, just whispers in the hallways, half-formed theories, all of them worse than the last. Then came the story from Braden. He lived just 2 houses away from the man's place. I heard him, Braden said quietly, sitting with us at lunch. The night after the lockdown, I was walking my dog, thought the house was empty. But I heard a voice. We stared. What did it say? I asked. He hesitated, swallowed, then repeated it in a whisper. You can't keep me out forever. The table fell silent. He wasn't yelling, Braden added. That's what made it worse. He sounded calm, like he meant it. I didn't know what to say to that. None of us did. Because what do you say when you realize someone's not trying to get inside? Because they already have. A few days later, we learned about the history. Apparently, the man had lived in that neighborhood for decades, long before any of us were born. He'd kept to himself for most of it until the last few years, when he started acting strangely. Pacing his front yard at night, staring at school buses as they passed, taking photos of the sidewalk from his porch. Parents filed complaints. The district sent out notices. But nothing ever stuck. Nothing ever proved anything. He wasn't trespassing. He wasn't touching anyone. He was just watching. Some said he used to be a school custodian. Others claimed he'd lost a child in a car crash right outside the campus years ago, and that something inside him broke. I didn't know what to believe. But I remember what Kayla said once, back before all of this started. Some people haunt places while they're still alive. Back then, I didn't understand what she meant. Now I do. Because this wasn't some nightmare that visited us and disappeared. It was something that had been growing quietly, right outside the walls of our school, waiting for someone to notice. And now that we had, it wasn't going away. It all unraveled when Brandy's mom found the box. Brandy lived right next door to the man. After everything that happened, her family decided it was time to move. They couldn't sleep at night anymore, not with that window right across from their kitchen. Always dark, always quiet, but never quite empty. While packing, her mom went into the basement to clean out some old paint cans. That's when she saw it. Tucked behind a broken dresser near the far corner, a small cardboard box, covered in dust. At first, she thought it belonged to them, but when she opened it, she screamed. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them, all taken from across the street, through trees, through windows, over fences, all of them of the school. Some were of kids on the playground, some showed them walking home. But what chilled Brandy's mom to the core was that in every photo, no one was looking at the camera. They didn't know they were being watched. And the timestamps? They went back years. She turned them in to the police, of course. That part made the news. Ongoing investigation, they called it. No current threat, they added. But none of us bought it. Especially not Brandy. She came back to school once after that. Just once. I saw her in the hallway, walking like her feet weren't sure where they were going. Her eyes looked distant, like she was still seeing something no one else could. I asked her how she was holding up. She looked at me and said, "He knew my name." "What?" "He knew my name," she repeated. One night, I left the window open, and I heard someone say it. Just once. Soft. From outside. I told myself it was a dream, but now, She didn't finish that sentence. She didn't have to. After that, everything shifted. Security doubled. New fences were installed. They even started using parent volunteers to monitor the school perimeter during recess. But it didn't matter. Because now the fear wasn't about what might happen. It was about what had already happened. What had been happening all along. How long had he been watching us? How many other boxes were out there? How many more names did he whisper that never got heard? And worst of all, was he really gone? They never told us if they found him. No arrest, no follow-up, just silence. The kind of silence that fills a room long after someone leaves it. The kind that makes you look over your shoulder and check your bedroom window. Twice. Weeks went by, then months. The school year moved on paper, anyway. Sports started back up. There was a winter dance. Teachers smiled again. The security guard stopped walking around with a radio clip to each hip. But some of us never really came back. Brandy's family moved. Kayla started being homeschooled. Tyler barely spoke anymore. We all drifted in different directions, but none of us forgot. Because it didn't feel like the end. It felt like something had just gone quiet. That's the difference between closure and silence. Closure feels like locking a door behind you. Silence feels like leaving it cracked and walking away. A few nights ago, I had a dream. At least I think it was a dream. I was walking past the school. The streetlights dim, that familiar chill in the air. Leaves scraped across the pavement like dry whispers. Everything was still. And then I saw it. One classroom lighten. Room 104. That was my homeroom last year. I stopped. My breath caught in my throat. There was someone standing inside. Not moving. Just watching. Not out the window, but at the wall. At nothing. Or maybe at something I couldn't see. I blinked, and the light went off. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. They say the man hasn't been seen in months. They say he might have left town. They say a lot of things. But here's what I know. Fear doesn't always come with footsteps. Sometimes it just lingers. In a closed curtain. In a half-written name on a window. In a box of photos no one was supposed to find. We don't talk about him anymore, not because we're not scared, but because we are. Talking about him makes him real again. And real things, they find their way back. So, if you ever walk past a school at night and see a light on in an empty classroom, don't stop. Don't look. And whatever you do, don't turn around if you hear someone say your name. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't the noise in the hallway. It's the silence that follows. It's not the shadow you see in the window. It's the one you didn't notice standing behind it. We tell ourselves these places are safe, that the worst is over. But stories like these remind us. Some things don't stay behind locked doors. And some people don't disappear just because we stop looking. So next time you're sitting in class or walking home from school and you feel like someone's watching, they probably are. Thanks for watching tonight's stories. If they left a chill in your spine, a question in your mind, let me know in the comments. And if you've ever experienced something strange at school, I want to hear it. There's more coming, more stories, more shadows, more doors we haven't dared to open yet. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, because the next story might just be the one that happens in your town. Until next time, stay safe, stay alert, and whatever you do, don't ignore the knock.